Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this video, we are going to witness the deliberate attempt of a bill which is aimed at ignoring or removing the history of Black people and replacing it with Bible history. Now, what you will see and hear in this video is that Texas Republicans are trying to force schools to display the 10 Commandments. This bill is not only unconstitutional, it's not only un-American, but it's also deeply Christian because it is exclusionary and arrogant. Now, this new bill removes the writings of so many authors like Frederick Douglass, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and most importantly, removes the history of Native Americans. Now, you would wonder why they are so bent on whitewashing history by removing all these writings of these people and even the history of Native Americans. This is really something that has been attempted many times. With that said, let's check out these two videos, and when I get back, we get to talk more about this topic.
When you look at this side-by-side comparison throughout the bill, it reads like a how-to guide in historical whitewashing. Are you aware that this new version of the bill from the Senate removes the writings of Frederick Douglass?
I am.
Are you aware that this new version of the bill from the Senate removes the writings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?
Yes.
Are you aware that this new version of the bill from the Senate removes the history of Native Americans?
The way the bill is laid out,
that's a yes or no question.
Because we were very clear that we could not be conclusive about every single document out there that we could. I'm going to give you an answer. This isn't a trial. I'm going to give you an answer.
Okay, I'm ready for the answer.
The way it's set out is so that a teacher can go to different documents in different authors by which to teach from. It's by no means meant to be a conclusive list.
Let me just ask you one more time. Are you aware that this new version of the bill from the Senate removes the history of Native Americans? It's on page 3 of the side-by-side if you don't have it in front of you.
Then I believe you.
Okay. Are you aware that this new version of the bill removes mentions of Cesar Chavez?
Yes.
Are you aware that this new version of the bill removes mentions of Susan B. Anthony?
Yes, I am.
Yet the new version of the bill from the Senate, this is not the bill we all passed as a House, but the Senate's version, it still includes the writings of Alexis de Tocqueville, and he's not even an American. Could that be because he's a white man?
Not exactly.
Can somebody tell me the reason why they don't want to tell students the truth? Like, why are they really bent on banning schools from teaching history of WS? How then will history not repeat itself? Like, this is really an interesting topic that we are going to unpack together right after the stitches. I'm sure I might not only be the one finding this sketchy, but others as well. So let's check out these teachers, and when I get back, we dive deep into this conversation and unpack a lot of things about this new bill. Here are the teachers.
Out there that we could. I'm going to give you an answer. This isn't a...
Bro, I am so proud of the humans we are becoming. I am so proud of it. Because look. I'm noticing a pattern. Everything bad that is happening in the world today is because of lack of power of the younger generation. Point blank. Whether you're white, black, Hispanic, Latino, Native American, we have been powerless forever. White, who gives a fuck, bro? There are people that have lived on this earth who don't have a concept of growth. They're reaching the end of their life, and yet they're fucking it up for the rest of us. Keep it a bean. If you look at the lawyer or the representative asking the questions, this man is unfathomably driven to have ethics and moral surpass the system that has been set in place.
Throughout the bill.
As an immigrant who has lived and worked in the state of Texas, who now lives and works in the state of Washington, between the overt racism of the state of Texas and the covert racism of the state of Washington, I would choose Texas any day, because they will tell you this is who we are. You know who they are. The state of Washington tells you this is not who we are. This is what we are. But they are lying about it. The state of Washington has pro-equity, anti-racism programs. They've even taken DE&I a step further. It's now diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Yet still, these people will gaslight the living daylight out of your soul. They will sap you dry of every energy you have left. Anyway, I'm not trying to downplay on the racism of Texas. I'm just saying, as someone who's lived in both places with my skin color, I'll choose Texas any day.
Washing.
Somebody asked me to talk about the changes being made to the curriculum here in Texas, and I think they wanted me to talk about the bills that are being passed, but I want to talk about the motivation. Why are these conservatives whitewashing our history? And I think what's happening is that we're seeing Christian apologetics being applied to history and imposed on the public school system. So what I mean by that is, for decades, Christians tried to control what science was taught in the classroom. This goes all the way back to the Scopes trial, but even when I was in school in the 90s, the chapter on evolution was always very fraught. And I had teachers that would go on rants about, I don't believe this, but the state forces me to teach this, because they didn't want to lose control of the classroom. And the reason things were so fraught was because of evangelicals' reliance on apologetics. And so apologetics is where Christians go and pick and choose different scientific facts that they believe proves the Bible is 100% accurate. Because in their minds, if they can scientifically prove that the sun stood still for a day, then when they tell you you're going to hell and they're going to heaven, you should take that as scientific fact. But they lost that battle. They don't really control what's being taught in the science classrooms anymore. And so now they're focusing on history, because after apologetics, it was about historic tradition. They would say, I know that I'm right and you're wrong because I follow this historic tradition that is decades or sometimes centuries long. But when we look at it, at that history objectively, we see that a lot of these leaders in these historic traditions are not great. And so then evangelicals are left with a conundrum. Do they admit that things are not as black and white as they say they are? Or do they admit that some of their religious leaders in the past are going to hell? And they don't want to do either one of those things. So instead, they've chosen this third way, which is to rewrite history and to pick and choose what's being taught so they can control that narrative and continue to prove themselves correct, even though there's all this information that says they're wrong. So they're simply trying to control the history classroom like they spent decades trying to control the science classroom.
Any kid for any reason they want.
And beyond that, it's not just about denying entry, it's also about removing problems. My best friend in high school went to a private school. Well, I went to a public one. And this didn't happen to him, but a couple of friends whose grades were not the best. Like, not bad. They were, C students. Suddenly they found themselves having to find a new school the second semester of senior year because, they had a reputation to maintain at that school. Like, all their marketing material had this grade point average in it, and if you weren't meeting that grade point average by time to graduate, well, you weren't getting a degree from that educational institution. No amount of vouchers is going to make up for the fact that you've got a B- average, and all the marketing material says that we only graduate people with B+ or above. You're not getting into the college you wanted to, after all. Also, look at Louisiana. Voucher systems are a scam, that's all.
For poor.
So go watch that video. It was very informative. School vouchers are probably coming to Texas, and I really didn't understand what the issues were or even what the supposed benefits were supposed to be until I saw that video. I did a little additional research, and it has become clear to me that the way they're trying to do school vouchers here, which is the same way they've done them in other locations, this is the most clear example of welfare for the rich that I've ever seen. Now, Greg Abbott is trying to be a proponent of this, saying it's good for Texans, it's good for choice and all these things. But the problem with that is that Greg Abbott lies, like, all the time to help out wealthy people and large corporations. So there's that.
It's funny how it's always, if we do it in God's name, it's always acceptable. But because it's in our God's name and nobody else's God's name, it doesn't matter because my God said so and this is how I'm going to force it on you. Like, I really have so many thoughts right now. But firstly, that is the most important thing they want to teach in schools. Not anything to do with nutrition, not anything to do with mental health, not finances, not self-S, but the 10 Commandments. That's fine. There are a couple of problems I think people will have with that. I honestly don't believe there's anything wrong with the 10 Commandments because I am a Christian, but in everything there's right and wrong, as in where to put it and where not to put it, place and time to talk about it. Secondly, your faith is only between you and God. Another thing, what about all the children that are in the schools that are not Christian, like that come from atheist families, Muslim families, Hindu families? Like, all of these religions are okay in America, but like limiting them and making them believe and teach them what we believe is right, which I feel is not okay, because everybody has the right to believe in whatever they would like to believe. Now, coming to the Black authors who talk about slavery and Black history, they want to get rid of in this sense, because obviously they don't want that being taught in schools. Let's take a look at Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was a formerly enslaved man who became a prominent activist, author, and public speaker. He became a leader in the abolitionist movement, which sought to end the practice of slavery before and during the Civil War. Now, after that conflict and the Emancipation Proclamation of 1862, he continued to push for equality and human rights until he was no more in 1895. Now, Douglas' 1845 autobiography, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, described his time as an enslaved worker in Maryland. It was one of 5 autobiographies he penned, along with dozens of net worth speeches, despite receiving minimal formal education. An advocate for women's rights, and specifically the right of women to vote, Douglas' legacy as an author and leader lives on. His work served as an inspiration to the civil rights movement of the 1960s and beyond. Now, Douglas published the first and most famous of his autobiographies, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave. He also authored My Bondage and My Freedom and Life and Times of Frederick Douglass. In it, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, he wrote, from my earliest recollection, I get the entertainment of a deep conviction that slavery would not always be able to hold me within its foul embrace, and in the darkest hours of my career in slavery, this living word of faith and spirit of hope departed not from me, but remained like ministering angels to cheer me through the gloom. He also noted, thus is slavery the enemy of both the slave and the slaveholder. Coming to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., during the less than 13 years of his leadership of the modern American civil rights movement from December 1955 until April 4th, 1968, African Americans achieved more genuine progress toward racial equality in America than the previous 350 years had produced. Now, Dr. King is widely regarded as America's preeminent advocate of nonviolence and one of the greatest nonviolent leaders in world history. Drawing inspiration from both his Christian faith and the peaceful teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, King led a nonviolent movement in the late 1950s and 60s to achieve legal equality for African Americans in the United States. While others were advocating for freedom by any means necessary, including violence, Martin Luther King Jr. used the power of words and acts of nonviolent resistance such as protest, grassroots organizing, and civil disobedience to achieve seemingly impossible goals. He went on to lead similar campaigns against poverty and international conflict, always maintaining fidelity to his principles that men and women everywhere, regardless of color, creed, are equal members of the human family. For crying out loud, they removed all of American history. They are trying to erase history. Get them. I want my children and grandchildren learning the real history, good or bad. Is anyone surprised that the same people who don't want science taught in science class are the ones who don't want history to be taught in history class? Texans, go register to vote and change the direction of your state. Education must not be whitewashed. I don't care if teachers teach us differently, but I do care if they try to sweep things under the rug like it didn't happen. The education Texas and Florida kids will be getting is heinous. These kids will literally know nothing about the truth of history. Native Americans aren't talked about in schools anyway. We advocate for ourselves and spread our history ourselves. The school's been whitewashed since. This is what the comment section looks like, guys, and you can be part of this conversation by simply sharing your thoughts on this topic in the comments section down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Shalom.